My name is Dulcie Trailer, and I'm 29 years old. 2 weeks ago, I married the love of my life, Caleb. People keep telling me this is supposed to be the happiest chapter, the soft beginning, where everything finally settles. Instead, I wake up with my jaw clenched, replaying one image like it's burned into my eyelids. Amy at my wedding reception, smiling, comfortable, untouchable. I didn't want to write this. I wanted my marriage to start clean, untouched by old wounds. But the truth is, the moment Amy walked into that room, everything I thought I'd buried came roaring back. And after nights of staring at the ceiling and reading story after story from people who survived families like mine, I realized something that both hurt and helped. I wasn't cruel. I wasn't dramatic. I was finally done bending. To understand why, you need the context, because without it, my father's version makes me sound heartless. My parents divorced when I was 12. It wasn't a surprise. My dad, Richard, had been emotionally absent for as long as I could remember. He lived in the house, but he wasn't really there. My mom carried everything: school forms, late-night talks, scraped knees, quiet disappointments. When the divorce happened, I felt more relief than grief. What shocked me was how quickly my dad replaced us. 6 months later, he introduced me to Amy, a woman he met through work. She entered our lives like a storm, loud, confident, and immediately in control. She laughed too big, spoke too fast, and treated every room like it was waiting for her approval. She was nothing like my mom. My mom listened, Amy performed. I remember the first dinner we had together. I'd rehearse politeness in my head, convince myself that if I just stayed agreeable, things would be fine. Halfway through a story I was telling my dad, Amy cut in and said, smiling, "Wow, Dulce, you talk so quietly. You should work on that." My dad laughed. That was the first crack. From there, it became a pattern. Amy made jokes about my mom being too soft, too emotional. She interrupted my conversations with my dad and reframed them like I was needy or immature. If I reacted, she'd clutch her chest and say, "I'm just trying to help." And my dad always told me to be patient. "She's trying," he'd say. "Don't be so sensitive. You need to make more effort." Effort became my responsibility. Discomfort became my problem. By my teenage years, every attempt I made to set a boundary somehow turned into evidence that I was ungrateful. If I pushed back, Amy became the victim. If I stayed quiet, I disappeared. So I learned distance. By the time I left for college, I only saw my dad on holidays. Even then, I felt like I was bracing for impact, mentally rehearsing how to stay neutral, how to avoid setting Amy off. Then came Caleb. Caleb didn't need to raise his voice to be strong. He listened in a way that made you feel chosen. When I told him about my family, he didn't minimize it or try to fix it. He just said, "That sounds heavy," and sat with me in it. When he proposed, it felt like standing on solid ground for the first time. We wanted a small wedding, intimate. No spectacle, no pressure, just the people who genuinely loved us. From the beginning, I knew there was one decision I couldn't avoid. Amy was not invited. I didn't arrive at that choice lightly. Over the years, she'd managed to alienate not just me, but my younger sister and several extended family members. Every gathering turned into tension, every milestone into a performance centered on her. Caleb and I wanted peace. Amy guaranteed chaos. So I called my dad. My hand shook so badly I had to press it flat against the counter. Caleb sat across from me, quiet, steady, like an anchor. "Dad," I said, forcing calm into my voice, "I need to talk to you about the wedding." He sounded cheerful, almost rehearsed. Then I said it. "Amy isn't invited." The silence on the line stretched too long. Finally, he exhaled. "Dulce, you're really doing this?" "I'm setting a boundary," I said, "for my wedding." He sighed, heavy and disappointed. "She's my wife." "I know. She really wanted to be there for you." The way he said it, like her desire outweighed my comfort, made my stomach twist. "This isn't about punishing her," I said. "It's about making sure my wedding is peaceful." Another pause. "Fine," he said tightly. "I'll come alone." Relief rushed through me, but it didn't erase the unease. My dad had a long history of agreeing in words and rewriting the rules in action. And sure enough, the guilt trip started. "She's taking this really hard. She's trying so much. I hope you know how much this hurts her." Each comment landed like a stone in my chest. As the wedding got closer, he suggested she could just stop by for the reception. When I shut that down, he asked if it was fair to make him choose between his wife and his daughter. "It's not about choosing," I said. "It's about respecting me." After that, he went quiet. For the last month before the wedding, I barely heard from him. Part of me hoped that meant he'd finally understood. The wedding day arrived. Caleb looked at me like I was the only person in the room. My mom cried. The venue glowed. For a few precious hours, everything felt right. Then I saw my dad walk in, alone, just like he promised. Relief washed over me. I actually believed, just for a moment, that he'd chosen me. That belief shattered during the reception. Caleb and I were greeting guests when I spotted her near the buffet, laughing with my cousins like she belonged there. Amy. My stomach dropped. I blinked hard, hoping I was wrong. I wasn't. I excused myself and went straight to my dad. He didn't look surprised when he saw me. That's when I knew. "Why is she here?" I asked, my voice barely steady. He shrugged. "I couldn't leave her at home." "You promised," I said. "It's not a big deal," he replied. "No one else seems to mind." Before I could respond, Caleb joined us. "She wasn't invited," he said calmly. My dad bristled. "I'm her husband." "And Dulce is your daughter," Caleb replied. The words landed harder than any argument ever had. "Are you really going to kick us out?" my dad asked, incredulous. My chest burned. Music swelled behind us. Glasses clinked. My wedding dress suddenly felt too tight. "Yes," I said, "you need to leave, both of you." His face hardened. "You're ruining your own wedding." That sentence cut deeper than I expected. He turned, grabbed Amy, and walked out. Heads turned. Whispers followed. I stood there shaking, watching my father leave my wedding. What I didn't realize then was that this wasn't the end of the damage. It was only the beginning. I barely slept that night. Caleb fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted in the way only someone who'd spent the entire evening quietly protecting another person can be. I lay awake beside him, staring at the ceiling, listening to the unfamiliar rhythm of married life begin under the weight of something unresolved. I kept seeing my dad's face when he said it. "You're ruining your own wedding." Like I was a child throwing a tantrum. Like I'd forced his hand. Like he hadn't walked in with a woman I explicitly said was not welcome. When morning came, the adrenaline was gone. All that was left was the ache. Caleb woke up and kissed my shoulder softly. "You okay?" I nodded automatically, then shook my head. "No," I said, "but I will be." I believed it, until I picked up my phone. The first thing I saw was my dad's post. It was vague, carefully vague, the kind of post designed to invite sympathy without telling the truth. Some people forget the meaning of family when it's inconvenient. I've always put others first, even when it costs me everything. The comments were already piling up. "So sorry you're going through this. Family should always come first. Heartbreaking when your own children turn on you." My chest tightened. Then Amy posted. She didn't hold back. Her post was long, emotional, performative. She talked about trying so hard to be accepted, about being shut out and humiliated for no reason, about how she'd been treated like an outsider, despite loving with her whole heart. She didn't name me. She didn't have to. She tagged my dad. She tagged mutual relatives. She tagged people who had been at the wedding. And suddenly the story wasn't about a boundary. It was about me being controlling, disrespectful, cold. Caleb watched my face as I scrolled. "Hey," he said gently, taking the phone from my hand. "Stop. You don't need to read that." But the damage was already done. By noon, the family group chat exploded. It started with my aunt asking, "Can someone explain what happened last night?" Within minutes, it turned into chaos. My mom stepped in early, explaining calmly that I'd set boundaries and my dad had ignored them. My dad's sister accused me of embarrassing him. One cousin said maybe Amy should have respected the invite. Another said I should have handled it privately. As if Amy showing up uninvited to my wedding was a minor misunderstanding. My phone buzzed nonstop. I muted the chat. That's when my dad texted me. "I'm sorry things turned out the way they did, but you really blew this out of proportion. Amy didn't deserve to be treated like that." I stared at the message for a long time. There was no apology in it, just deflection wrapped in the word sorry. Caleb read it over my shoulder. "That's not accountability," he said quietly. I knew he was right, so I didn't respond. Instead, I did something I never thought I'd do. I opened Reddit. I wrote everything out. Carefully, honestly. I laid out the timeline. The boundary, the promise, the betrayal. I didn't insult anyone. I didn't exaggerate. I just told the truth. I expected maybe a handful of replies. By the time I refreshed an hour later, the post had exploded. Hundreds of comments, then thousands. Strangers told me I wasn't wrong, that boundaries aren't cruelty, that my dad had chosen his comfort over my trust. Some shared eerily similar stories. Parents who agreed to rules and then ignored them. Step-parents who thrived on conflict. weddings that became battlegrounds. I cried reading them. Not because I felt validated, though I did, but because for the first time I felt seen. That night, my younger sister texted me, "Can we talk?" We met for coffee the next day. She looked nervous, stirring her drink like she was bracing herself. "I never wanted to make things worse for you," she said quietly. "But Amy's done this to me too." She told me about passive-aggressive comments, about being undermined in private, about going to our dad for support and being told she was overreacting. Hearing it made something inside me settle. This wasn't in my head. This wasn't just me. That night, after she left, I opened a blank note on my phone and started drafting a message to my dad. Not angry, not dramatic, just honest. I wrote about how his actions hurt me, how bringing Amy wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a choice, how moving forward would require respect, not guilt. I didn't send it, not yet, because deep down I knew once I did, there would be no pretending anymore. And the silence between us was about to become something much louder. I stared at the draft for 3 days. Every time I reread it, my chest tightened. Not because the words were cruel, but because they were honest. And honesty, in my family, had always come with consequences. Caleb never pushed me. He just asked one question every night before bed. "Are you writing from anger or clarity?" On the 4th night, I realized the answer scared me. Clarity. So I hit send. I told my dad exactly what his actions had done to me. That inviting Amy after agreeing not to wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a betrayal. That my wedding wasn't the place for him to test my boundaries. That if we were going to have a relationship moving forward, it would require accountability and respect. I made one thing painfully clear. This isn't about Amy being excluded. It's about you choosing not to respect me. The reply came less than an hour later. At first glance, it looked thoughtful, measured. Then I actually read it. He said I was too emotional, that I'd overreacted, that Amy only came because she didn't want him to feel alone. And then the line that made my hands shake. "You've always been influenced by your mother's negativity." There it was. The deflection, the blame shift, the refusal to look inward. I felt something in me go quiet. Not angry, not even sad. Just done. So I sent one final message. I laid it all out clearly. No room for interpretation. If you can't acknowledge how your choices hurt me, and if you can't respect the boundaries I've set, then I need to step back from our relationship. This isn't punishment, it's protection. I wasn't cutting him off forever, but I was done negotiating my dignity. I put my phone down and cried into Caleb's chest, not because I doubted myself, but because some small part of me had still hoped my father would choose differently. The next day, my sister called. "He's been venting to me," she said, "saying you're being unreasonable." "And?" I asked, bracing myself, and I told him he was wrong. The relief that washed through me nearly knocked me over. She told me more stories, things Amy had said to her over the years, moments I hadn't even known about. It confirmed what I already felt in my bones. This wasn't just my fight. Then Amy made her move. The email landed in my inbox late at night, long, condescending, smothered in fake concern. She told me I was selfish, that I'd driven a wedge between father and wife, that I'd regret this one day when it's too late. She ended it with, "For your own good, you should reconsider." I didn't reply. I blocked her on everything. Email, social media, phone. That was the moment I chose no contact. Not out of spite, but out of self-preservation. The fallout was immediate. Relatives started calling. Some supported me quietly. Others pressured me to apologize, just to keep the peace. My dad began reaching out to mutual friends, painting himself as the wounded parent and me as the ungrateful daughter, influenced by my husband and my mother. I didn't respond. Instead, Caleb and I packed a bag and left for a small weekend getaway. No phones, no updates, just us. It was there, sitting across from him at a tiny cafe by the water, that I admitted something out loud for the first time. I've been trying to earn his love my whole life. Caleb reached for my hand. "You don't need to earn love," he said, "especially not from someone who keeps moving the goalposts." When we got back, I booked a therapy appointment. The therapist didn't tell me what to do. She helped me see patterns, how guilt was my dad's favorite tool, how silence was his punishment, and how I'd been conditioned to confuse compliance with harmony. 4 weeks passed. No calls, no texts. Then a package showed up at our door. Large, heavy, expensive. Inside was a high-end espresso machine. Tucked beneath it was a handwritten note from my dad. "Hope we can put everything behind us and move forward." No apology, no acknowledgement. Just a reset button I hadn't agreed to press. I left the box unopened in the corner of the kitchen. Because I knew one thing for sure now. Peace without accountability is just another form of control. And this story, my story, wasn't finished yet. The espresso machine sat in the corner of our kitchen for 3 days, unopened, untouched, like it was waiting for me to make the wrong decision. Every time I walked past it, my stomach tightened, not because I was tempted, but because I recognized the pattern. My dad had always used gestures to skip conversations, a gift instead of accountability, an object instead of an apology. Caleb noticed it too. "He's trying to move forward without looking back," he said one night, leaning against the counter. "That doesn't mean he's changed." I nodded. Therapy had already put words to what my body knew. Repair without responsibility isn't repair at all. A few days later, my sister called. "He's been texting me," she said, exasperated. "Long messages about how he misses us, how he wants his family back." "Did he mention the wedding?" I asked. She paused. "Not really, just how hurt he is." That told me everything. Around the same time, something unexpected happened. Amy's online presence went quiet. After weeks of vague posts about toxic families and martyrdom, mutual acquaintances started pushing back. Commenters asked why she showed up to a wedding she wasn't invited to. Others pointed out her pattern of drama. One post turned into a comment war, and then suddenly, nothing. Her account went silent. It wasn't satisfying, just relieving. Then, out of nowhere, my dad texted me. Short, direct. "I'm sorry for the hurt I caused. Can we talk?" It wasn't perfect, but it was the first time he hadn't blamed someone else. I didn't respond immediately. A few hours later, my aunt, one of the few people who'd stayed neutral, reached out. She offered to mediate a conversation between my dad and me. She promised to keep it focused and respectful. I agreed on one condition. Amy would not be involved. To my surprise, my dad accepted. Before the meeting, I laid out my boundaries clearly. No guilt tripping, no deflection, no blaming my mom or my husband. If the conversation drifted, I would leave. Walking into my aunt's house that day felt heavier than my wedding ever had. My dad looked older, tired. For a moment, I saw the man I'd spent years hoping would show up for me. He started with an apology, a real one, imperfect, but his. Then, almost reflexively, he slipped. "Family should stick together," he said. "I just wish you'd been more understanding of Amy's feelings." My chest tightened, but I didn't flinch. "I set a boundary," I said calmly. "You agreed to it, and then you crossed it. This isn't about understanding, it's about respect." Something shifted. For the first time, he didn't interrupt. He admitted he'd made a mistake bringing Amy to the wedding, that he'd underestimated how deeply it would hurt me. He didn't excuse it. He didn't justify it. It wasn't a full redemption, but it was progress. By the end of the conversation, we agreed to take things slowly. Limited contact, clear boundaries, no forced togetherness, no pretending. Amy's name never came up again. Afterward, I updated Reddit. The responses were split. Some encouraged caution, others warned me not to lower my guard. Both felt valid. The holidays became the real test. My dad invited us to Thanksgiving. Amy would be hosting. We declined. Instead, we spent the day with Caleb's family. Warm, loud, easy. No tension, no walking on eggshells. For the first time in years, a holiday didn't leave me emotionally drained. My sister followed suit. She stayed low contact and avoided gatherings where Amy was present. In doing so, we grew closer than we ever had before, bonded not by trauma, but by clarity. Therapy continued to change me. I learned how often I'd mistaken guilt for love, how I'd prioritized peace over myself, how saying no didn't make me cruel, it made me honest. My dad still reaches out occasionally, light messages, neutral topics. I respond when I want to. And that's the difference now. I choose. Amy has stayed silent. I haven't heard from her, and I don't ask about her. That chapter is closed unless she ever decides to take responsibility, which I'm no longer waiting for. When I think back to my wedding day, I no longer see just the confrontation. I see Caleb's steady hand in mine, my mom's tears of joy, the laughter, the dancing, the moments that were never taken from me. The rest is simply proof of why boundaries matter. If there's one thing this experience taught me, it's this. Love that demands self-erasure isn't love, and peace that costs your dignity is too expensive. I don't know what the future holds with my dad, but I do know this. I'm finally living on my own terms. And that feels like closure. For a long time, I thought closure would feel louder. I imagined some dramatic moment, my dad finally saying the exact right words, Amy apologizing publicly, the family agreeing on a single version of events where I wasn't the villain. That isn't what happened. Closure came quietly. It showed up on an ordinary Tuesday morning when I realized I hadn't thought about Amy in days. When my phone buzzed and my body didn't tense, bracing for another message loaded with guilt or accusation. It showed up when Caleb and I sat at the kitchen table, drinking coffee from mismatched mugs, talking about weekend plans instead of family landmines. That unopened espresso machine eventually went back. I didn't include a letter. I didn't explain myself again. I just returned it. That choice felt final in a way words never had. My dad noticed. He didn't confront me. Instead, he sent a short message a week later. I understand. I'll respect your space. I read it twice. Was it perfect? No. Was it everything I once hoped for? Also, no. But it was the first time he hadn't tried to rewrite reality. We've settled into something that feels distant, but stable. Occasional check-ins, neutral topics. No pressure to perform closeness we haven't earned. I don't talk about Amy with him. I don't ask, and he doesn't push. That boundary is non-negotiable. My sister made her own decision not long after. She chose full no contact, not out of anger, but exhaustion. I supported her completely. In doing so, we became closer than we'd ever been growing up. We talk honestly now, about what we tolerated, about what we're unlearning. It turns out healing is easier when you're not the only one telling the truth. Therapy helped me understand something crucial. I wasn't asking for too much. I was asking the wrong people. Caleb's family showed me what respect looks like without conditions. His mother checks in without prying. His father listens without correcting. Love there doesn't come with strings or scorekeeping. That contrast was painful at first. Now it's grounding. The biggest shift happened inside me. I stopped rehearsing explanations. Stopped defending decisions that were never up for debate. Stopped shrinking to make others comfortable. When my dad suggested another holiday together recently, with Amy present, I declined without guilt, without apology. Just, that doesn't work for us. And that was it. No spiral, no second guessing, no need to justify my peace. Looking back at my wedding day, I finally see it clearly. Yes, there was conflict. Yes, there was heartbreak. But there was also something powerful that day, something I didn't recognize at the time. I chose myself. In front of witnesses, in front of family, in a dress meant to mark a beginning. That choice changed everything. If you're reading this and you're standing at the edge of a similar decision, wondering if setting boundaries makes you cruel, let me say this as clearly as I can. Protecting yourself is not betrayal. Choosing peace is not selfish. And love that requires you to disappear is not love. I'm Dulcie Traylor. I am 29. I'm married to a man who stands beside me without hesitation. And for the first time in my life, I'm not afraid of what walking away might cost me, because I finally understand what staying was costing instead. That's the truth, and that's where my story ends.